Netflix had a very long term vision of what they're doing, and what Netflix was a startup. They said, you know, we're not going to do a perfect product. Their first product was actually DVDs. You know, they would send you DVDs home according to a list of movies, a queue that you had on the web. So they needed customers that had the web and had DVD players. And the DVD players were not that great and they were expensive. Not many people had a web browser, but that's how Netflix started. They almost died because the growth of a market segment where people have both a DVD player and the web was very, very small and didn't grow as fast. They couldn't raise more money. And they went to a company in the field and offered that company to buy them for $1 million. That's a company. They threw them out of the building. So Netflix's product served a niche of people who were kind of techies, right? And they were willing to wait 2-3 days to see the movie. It was not impulse buying. Okay, they're willing to wait a couple of days to see a movie. And their business model, and all the disruptions always happen with the, with the business model. Netflix had, in Silicon Valley, they had their first logistics service in a city called Los Gatos. So it was like an Amazon fulfillment center. You had people, they would automate the printing, the address on the red envelope, and the movie comes to your home, you find it in your mailbox, you see the movie, you return it. So the costs of Netflix are correlated to the throughput of movies to your home. The more movies you see, the more it costs them. They would love you to keep the movie because it's a subscription model. So you pay for five movies at one time, let's say. If you just keep these 5 movies, if you trash them, if you break the DVDs and never return them and keep paying $5 a month, that's a great business for Netflix. They don't make money on late fees. They make money on subscription and hoping that you don't watch too many things because their costs are correlated to the throughput. And of course, this market is riding on a curve. The curve is the web and DVD player prices keep going down, going down, going down. Computers become more and more powerful, and eventually you can see movies online. You don't need the logistics centers, you need other things, you need lots of servers, you need AI, you need all kinds of things. They know you very, very intimately. Blockbuster didn't know anything about their customers. So eventually Blockbuster only has a lot of weight. It has all these stores, they have to pay for all these stores. And more people are seeing their movies through here. And just a side story, but relates to scaling, is Netflix hires a lot of people to tag movies very early on. Most of Netflix's life is sending DVDs by mail, which is, by the way, ingenious, because like most post companies in the world, they're owned by governments and they lose money, which means that the government is subsidizing your logistics, right? It's a great business model. So their rule for tagging movies, of course, you tag the name of the producer, the name of the lead actor, lead female actress, maybe some words, keywords about the plot, and so on. But they told their people, tag anything. And they tried to recommend movies according to these tags. So at some point, I would get a lot of recommendations for strong female lead. Of course, there is no category like that in the Hollywood industry. But somebody tagged, and apparently I like movies with strong female leads. Their recommendation engine was not really good enough because there were too many categories and it's kind of sparse. So they actually created a competition. You probably know the Netflix X, or the X Prize, I think it was called. And actually there were 3, they wanted somebody who could beat them by at least 10%. And in the first year, nobody succeeded. I think it was IBM, AT&T, or some lab in England, IBM in Israel, and some guy in the UK. And then they allowed them to do another run, and they joined together, and they actually barely beat them. And they gave them all the data. It was a huge corpus of data. So it's kind of an interesting story. And then, so Netflix is riding on the curve of technology. They already beat, Blockbuster is already dead, but of course now Netflix has other competitors. They have studios that produce content and they're not willing to sell to Netflix. So Netflix realizes that it has to make its own content. The story goes, I don't know if it's true, but it's a great story. So they send the script writer, they tell him, write a script for a pilot of a series. Kevin Spacey is the lead actor, this is the lead actress, this is the composer, this is going to be the producer, this is, you know, the director. It takes place in Washington, D.C. It has to do with politics and the White House. The screenwriter gets this thing. It's really bizarre. He's never seen anything like that. So he writes the pilot, but he adds something that they didn't ask for. Somebody runs over a dog. And the next day, he gets the job. He gets his thing, the contract, a few $1 million to do the pilot. He said, what about the dog? They said, who cares about the dog? And this is House of Cards. So House of Cards was made per spec because they tagged and because they already knew what the target market was. The biggest target market for their first series. And by the way, binging, where did binging come from? Well, if you rely on subscription and you don't rely on ads, you don't care. If people don't have to wait another week, just give them the whole bloody thing right now. And that really breaks the TV model. So, a lot of entrepreneurs I know, they have an idea for a startup, and they say, let's go to sell to a Blockbuster. Let's go and talk to the incumbent, to someone who's big there. You don't want to do that. First of all, they'll probably kick you out. And then, if they buy you, they'll probably break you. You'll not be able to succeed because they don't have the right culture. So let's look at another one, Borders and Amazon. Okay, so Amazon also has a big idea really early on. Amazon was started in 1994. And Jeff Bezos knew at that time that he's going to compete with Walmart. But he's thinking, where do I start? What's my beachhead? I need a category that I have where the competitors are very fragmented. There's no big one, and I can just break their back. And I can offer some kind of value, but I'm going for a niche market with technology that's barely good enough. And he chooses books, because there is no one bookstore that can house all the books in the world, but on the web, it's just a list, you know, it's a file. So he sells books in the beginning. And when you go to buy a book on Amazon in those days, it's not the same, you know, if you really love books, you love bookstores. You know, you go, you feel them, you have a cover, you can sit down and read them, and there are other people like you, and you discover new books, you just go and you see some stand here and there's not. And in Amazon, you don't have any of that. It's not the same experience. It's barely good enough. And of course, Amazon broke borders and then continued into other categories, and they rode the same curve, right? So they know that they're riding the technology curve. They're riding computing. They know that the computing improves all the time. The cost, the marginal cost of creating insight from data is negative. They're already getting paid. And they're just, the more customers they have, the more insight they have, the more powerful they are. And Amazon is actually doing other things which are very, very unique. Amazon is a company that continues to do disruptive innovation. And it's very, there is no other Amazon in the world. That's a whole other case study. So again, if Amazon at the beginning would have gone to Borders and say, buy us, Borders would say, who needs this thing? It's a crappy service. We don't need it. We have lots of customers coming here. We can also sell them cappuccino. You know, we can impulse buying at the stand. You can buy a pen, buy a card, a greeting card, whatever. And they just broke their back completely. Some companies actually succeed. Very, very, very rare. So rare that I have only 2 examples. There are very few examples of incumbents, successful companies, that were able to disrupt. And what they need to do, if you think about Borders or Cadence that I mentioned before, those companies will not allocate resources to create a good enough product for a niche market, for a niche segment. It doesn't make sense for them. They don't do it. But if you're willing to cannibalize your business with something, with a different business model, you have to be, it feels like you have to be really, really brave, but no, this is the right thing to do. You have to be really brave not to change your business, because then you're gone. So Intuit has several products, TurboTax for preparing taxes in the US. So any one of you who prepare taxes in the US probably use TurboTax. And they have other products for managing small businesses. And all of a sudden, this company, Mint, comes from nowhere with a really bizarre value proposition. This is for small business owners and for individuals. They don't do taxes. They say, we'll manage all your finances. Here's, create an account. You give us all the usernames and all the passwords into all your financial accounts. And we'll offer you better services. So you actually, over the web, you give them all the passwords into your Visa account, your bank account, your pension, everything, and your stock trading, things you value the most. You give them all that information. They come back and said, we found a cheaper credit card for you. We found a better pension provider, Kupat Tegmulim, whatever. And initially, the people at Intuit just ignored them, because Intuit's customers are not these kinds of crazy people who just give you all the passwords. Intuit, they work with real people. And then they start seeing this company, Mint, start taking some of their customers away. So in the beginning, big companies ignore. In the beginning, big companies don't even see these startups because they're not attacking their main customers. Then they laugh. And I worked for Digital Equipment Corporation when workstations started coming in, Sun Microsystems, and we just laughed. I said, who is selling, never mind who is selling, who is buying an engineering workstation with a Unix operating system? This is a toy operating system. This is not a serious company. Who is this Sun Microsystems? And these guys are nuts. They're stupid. Who invested in these guys? So we have these mini computers. They're huge. We sell them for millions of dollars. And so who's going to buy this stuff? So we're laughing. And then like a year later, there is an Israeli guy who starts up a company in our domain, which is computer-aided design. His name is Ali Feingold. He creates a company called Daisy. He sells software. Who sells software? We don't sell software. We sell a huge, complete system that costs millions of dollars. So now we have two objects to laugh at. We can laugh at Sun Microsystems and we can make fun of Daisy. And a few years later, we don't exist anymore. I mean, I left before the ship sank. And what we tried to do is, in our system, we tried to make the terminals smarter. We thought, we said, okay, so we'll make smarter terminals. But it's a totally different architecture. That's not what customers wanted. We never talked to the customers who bought the Sun Microsystems and the Daisy. Never. So we didn't know what to do. Intuit acquired Mint and told the entrepreneur, Mint, destroy our business. Just replace everything. So today, the core business of Intuit to small businesses and consumers is really Mint. So they allowed Mint to just completely empty out their traditional business. I think I have one more example maybe.
But why do you call it cannibalism? Because it's just an M&A.
It's not just an M&A. I'll try to...
Because usually we refer to cannibalism when you're taking one of your arms and you replace it with another one.
Let me give you another example from the automotive area, okay? Because we'll read about it, right? So we know that there are three things that are happening today in automotive. One is cars are becoming electric, right? And there's only one company in the world that 100% of their cars are electric drivetrain, which is Tesla. All the others, maybe 1% of all the cars they made in their history is electric, so they don't have a lot of experience. Second thing that we see happening is autonomous cars, right? And it's not there yet, but there's a big benefit because, more than 1 million people are killed every year in accidents, and tens of millions are wounded, and there's loss of property. So, and 95% of all accidents are because of driver fault, inattention, and so on. So, if we could reduce 95%, if we can save about 1 million people a year, and all the damages related to that, there is a big benefit, obviously. And the third thing that we see is ride sharing, right? Uber, Lyft, Via, Get, meaning we don't necessarily share a seat without, in the vehicle, but the vehicle is shared. So a vehicle that your private vehicle, 94% of the time, or 96% of the time, it's just sitting there. It's not working. It's not doing anything. 4% is being used. And it's the second biggest acquisition that people make after their home. And Madison Avenue, after World War II, Detroit and Madison Avenue in New York were really expert in selling us an object of desire. Most people buy expensive cars because they're a symbol of freedom, sex appeal, all kinds of things like that. Now, if you look at these three things coming together, where's this going? An electric drivetrain actually has 10x less parts than internal combustion engine. Vehicle companies make most of their profit on aftermarket, on servicing cars and selling spare parts. No, electric drivetrain, other than changing the battery, which is not the car manufacturer's business actually, unless you're a Tesla, it's LG or Panasonic, they don't break down. There are no parts, there's no carburetor, there's almost nothing there. It's just some electronics and electric motors. So it reduces the cost per ride quite dramatically. If you think of a taxi cab and you throw out the driver, you're reducing the cost by about 60%. So if you throw out the driver and you have an electric car rather than internal combustion, you get to a point where the cost per ride is so low that you can operate a fleet of taxis, electric autonomous taxis, where you don't charge for the ride. You have a captive, you have a person inside the car. Well, we know how to sell things, like Starbucks. You let them smell coffee, and you can sell them a cappuccino and a croissant. The marginal cost of a cappuccino grande at Starbucks, because they have to pay for the building and the barista and so on, is actually more expensive than the cost of a ride in an electric vehicle, taxi with no driver, that is used 70% of the time. So now, you look at that, you say, young people now are going back to cities, right? They don't want to live with their aging parents in the suburbs is no longer fun. It's not the hip thing. So you want to be, San Francisco, New York, in cities that are thriving. And you don't need to buy a car. You just order a ride. And today you pay Uber. It's expensive. But imagine if in a few years, you don't pay for the ride. You just have your morning coffee. That's what you pay for. If that happens, in the US, the number of cars per family on the average is 2.24. Imagine, let's say 2. Okay? Imagine that the second car, which has a lifetime of about 8-9 years, is not renewed within the next 10 years. Okay? So car companies are going to have an overcapacity of maybe 30-40%. And they cannot survive. If they don't operate at 90+% of capacity, manufacturing capacity, their expenses are so high, they fail. And they can't even consolidate, because if you take two companies that have excess capacity and you merge them together, you just get one big company that has too much capacity and will go bankrupt even faster. So what should car companies do? What they should do is say, we need to build, own, and operate these taxi fleets. Because on a car today, we sell a car for $30,000 and we make another $5,000 over the lifetime in spare parts and so on. And that's where most of our profit are. With this kind of a vehicle, we could probably have revenues of $100,000 a year, or up to $150,000 a year. That's what we should do. How do they manage to do that? You know, they're making money today on the cars. In the future, they're going to go bankrupt. What should they do? What they should do is they should accelerate this move into autonomous electric shared fleets, but they're afraid to do that because they signal to the market that their business is bad. So they just continue and they try to do small steps. And none of these companies are running in a big way because they're afraid to cannibalize themselves. Because if they accelerate this, they die.
Now, this is the difference between evolution and revolution.
Right.
The idea of revolution, okay, I would say it in a different way. Evolution, part of the evolution here is the cannibalism, which means that you take something that people got used to do for many years, and you just change it to something that they can accept. Revolution, unlike evolution, is market re-educated, which means I'm going to educate the people, I'm going to teach them how to use something that they didn't use before, new behavior, new manners, new life. And this is a big difference. That's why I think about cannibalism as something which is very, very simple, and something which is very common, and something which is which stands on the right line, on the right path.
But in fact, it doesn't happen. And in fact, companies, including startups, do not educate customers.
Because it's too expensive.
Yeah, nobody educates customers. You need to put a product out there that people find very attractive and will change their behavior because of that. And usually the people who will change their behavior because of the new product that's coming in is a niche market that is unserved. They don't have anything, and you give them something which is better. So if you think about the adoption of cellular phones in the beginning, they were very, very expensive. But if you're an executive and you're running around all the time, you're willing to have a very low quality service, very low quality call. You drop the call many, many times, but at least you can communicate because you're a traveling salesman and you're spending 80% of the time in your car. You don't have any other choice. You have nothing else. So you do that and you're willing to pay the price. There are enough people, and then the quality improves, technology improves, you have better base stations, more people buy it, and what happens today? I don't have a landline phone in my house. Landline phones are disappearing. Who needs them? Because, you know, these things are good enough.
That's part of cannibalism.
Yeah, but who cannibalized? So if you look at Israel or at any other countries, in the US, for example, and that's a great going into this topic, who lost and who gained? The phone companies, Verizon, AT&T, those companies lost. Those companies are just pipes. They're a commodity service. Who won? Somebody who was not even in the game. Okay? Because what is the iPhone? I think Christensen says, I believe the same thing. The iPhone is not a phone at all. As a phone, this is the crappiest phone you could have. And the ergonomics doesn't fit your ear. Most of the time, you don't even make calls. And you look at the younger generation, they never pick up the phone. They never answer calls. You know, they prefer WhatsApp. They prefer recorded messages on WhatsApp. The young generation does not talk on the phone. So what is the phone? It's a crappy computer with a small screen, and you can't do multitasking. But it's in your pocket, and it's very simple to use, and you can access all the services on the web and so on. What you used to be able to do only on the computer. So Apple was willing to take the risk of cannibalizing their MacBook business, the PCs, with the iPhone. And I think the data shows that PC sales are all continuously dropping. And they even went further with the iPad, which is an even bigger risk for this. And eventually, these devices are mostly going to disappear. And because these are becoming better and better and moving up, you know, the performance curve. And one second, I just want to finish the slide and talk about collateral damage. Nokia just happened to be a victim. Apple was not aiming to kill Nokia. Apple didn't care about Nokia. So for the same thing, if you look at Amazon today, Amazon needs today to make logistics delivery very, very cheap. They don't want to kill FedEx. They don't want to kill UPS. They actually don't care about these companies. These companies are going to die just because Amazon needs to serve its customers.
Wait, Amazon does the delivery, they have their own trucks.
Excuse me?
They have their own trucks, yeah.
Amazon is doing so many things. So if you saw the drones, that's still a dream far away. But Amazon is covering the complete logistics chain. They already have 50 huge cargo airplanes. They're just buying more. And why do they need to do that? Anybody here has Amazon Prime?
Yeah.
Yeah. How much do you pay? $100 a year. Amazon is losing billions of dollars on Amazon Prime. Because, you remember that you need a toothbrush, you order a toothbrush, right? I mean, everything, it's crazy. To maintain pulling people in to buy anything and everything from Amazon whenever they feel like it, they need to have their own logistics because it's way too expensive. Okay? So, same, yeah.
Maybe less imperialistic and succeed.
Excuse me?
Can you be less imperialistic and succeed? It means that.
Well, yeah, I'll give you one example. Actually, the question was, can you be less imperialistic and succeed? So if you've lived in the US in the last 10 years or so, and you were looking for secondhand things, or to buy a used car, or rent an apartment, you probably use Craigslist. Anybody, you know Craigslist? Craig is Craig Newmark. And he started around the same time that eBay started. And Craigslist is boring. I mean, it's not beautiful. It's just text, and you go, there are many categories. And it's free. And Craigslist has only, I think, 5 things that they take money on. So in big cities, for renting or buying homes, they will take a small cut. Everything else is free. Because Craig Newmark is an avowed Marxist. So this company has revenues of about $400 million a year. It could have been $400 billion a year. He doesn't want to make money. In the process, he had his own Nokia, which he completely destroyed, not because he wanted to. So it used to be that if you wanted to buy a used item, you went to the newspaper and there were these inch ads. Remember the small ads? The small ads is how good investigative journalism worked. They cost a lot of money. That's how the newspapers made money. They didn't make money on the big ads, on the big, diamonds and so on. The big money was in these small things, and Craigslist destroyed their business. So the reason, excuse me?
And Google.
A little bit of Google, but actually Craigslist was a real killer of this thing, because you don't put your ad in the New York Times or the San Jose Mercury or anything like that. They didn't intend to do that. That's what happened. So yeah, you could be a Marxist and get people to flock to you.
So the Apple example is really interesting because my understanding is that they didn't destroy their core business when they created the disruptive business. They figured out a way to have synergy between their core business and their disruptive one.
Yeah.
So they've actually increased their sales of MacBooks and all these things in the process. So I mean, this whole time, listening to your discussion, just the narrative of what we're doing in this room in a university as an obsolete institution keeps going through my head. So I keep thinking about, when a big institution creates a disruptive direction, is there a way to do that without, and the model that seems to be going through my head is, let's say, Weitzman, where they created a separate campus, or Stanford, a place like that, and they say these are two things that can work together, but they can't be completely synergized.
So that's a great point, and in fact, Christensen, his business is he takes his 3 lines to corporates, and that's what he tells them. He tells them, you must do disruptive innovation. That means you have to be willing to possibly cannibalize your business, and the way you should do it is you set up a separate company and fund that company, own it, and let it destroy you, you know. If it destroys you, okay, at least you have something, not at least, you'll have a really valuable asset over there. And had I known this lesson in 1991, when I did this thing at Cadence, this new division,